Good morning, one and all. This is Dr. Diana. Welcome to session 25 on modern software engineering. We have been dealing with units 3, 4, and 5. We have completed revision of all of them. We are starting with the revision on Unit 2. Unit 2 is about agile development, and in the agile development environment, how do we establish collaboration is what we are going to see in Unit 2. What are the strategies we can adopt in coming up with a very good collaboration inside agile teams? Because agile teams essentially rely on collaboration, we are going to make small changes to every aspect of development that can aid in better collaboration. Now, when we try and contrast with the traditional software engineering approaches, we see that the traditional approach does not require exhaustive communication between teams because the work is not carried out in parallel. So, every member of the team is by themselves aware of what is the progress of the development. But in agile environment, we can see that the software development is done in parallel. So there are multiple teams that are working in parallel in different aspects of the project. Some of them we may be collecting requirements, some of them may be in the design stage, some may be in the development stage, some may have tested and then deployed. So each of these teams are going to have a different progress line or a timeline. So it is difficult for other teams to follow what my team is doing. In that case, collaboration between teams becomes even more difficult. So we are going to adopt certain strategies that can help in increasing the collaboration between the teams of the project. For these, the more effectively your programmers can access and understand the information they need, the more effectively they will be at creating software. So, it is by default that collaboration is the base. So, when you start with development, everybody needs to collaborate. As much of information is available, that much of productivity you get during development. The better information customers and managers have, the better they can manage the schedule and provide feedback to the programmers. There are no glowing lines to sterilely transport information from one brain to another. So you need to start with better communication. Instead, people have to work together. They have to ask questions. They have to discuss idea. And at some point, they even have to disagree on what the other person in the team says. Unless this sort of communication happens, it is difficult to collaborate between and among different teams. Now, there are 8 practices that can help your team and its stakeholders to collaborate effectively and efficiently. The first aspect is the trust. Trust is very essential for the team to thrive well together. And always concentrate on sitting together. It leads to fast, accurate communication rather than communicating by emails or by messages, by other forms of documents. It is easier if you sit together and then plan on things. And we also must have real customer involvement because agile includes certain customers in the development space, and we start developing whatever the customer prioritizes. It is essential that we involve the customer completely. It helps the team understand what to build and which one to build first. And we also need a ubiquitous language between the members of the development team to understand each other better. We will be looking into all of these topics very elaborately in the next few sessions. And then we will have to conduct some stand-up meetings along the way, so that you can keep all the team members or members of different teams informed of what every member in the team is doing. And not only this, once I have communicated certain things, work needs to be done. So we need to follow certain protocols during the development. This is called as the coding standard. The coding standards provide a template for seamlessly joining different teams' work, so that when they complete each of their development, everything will blend well together. And then we have to identify certain methods for providing iteration demos, and these demos keep the team's efforts aligned with the goals of the stakeholder. The last one we will be concentrating on is the reporting. This reporting helps reassure the organization that the team is working well. Now, reporting is a very essential part. Now that we are in the COVID situation, all of us know that our work progress is only done through online methodologies. People don't see what we are working, but we can inform what work we have done. This reporting becomes essential when everything goes online. So people don't have to come to your place and verify whether you are working or not. This reporting should be able to present your work well in front of the others. The first thing we will concentrate on is the trust. Is it possible that such a non-functional parameter is so much required in a technical development space, is what your question might mean. So trust is, we work together effectively and without fear. Now, if everybody is intimidated to start a work, then they may not produce anything effectively. So, in order to create that ambitious and fearless environment, trust between the team members is very, very critical. When one member of the team encounters a question that she cannot answer, she doesn't hesitate to ask someone who does not know the answer. And when somebody knows the answer, we should be able to approach them and then to receive our answers before the development. So trust is essential for the team to perform this well. Trust doesn't magically appear. You'll have to work out trust. So there are certain strategies which are suggested, which can help you develop trust among the team members. The first is the programmer customer programmer empathy. What is empathy? What is it meant by empathizing? Empathy means to look from another person's perspective and to understand their perspective, which means, now, the customer can often feel that a programmer doesn't care about their feelings, their needs, their deadlines, some of which, if missed, could even cost them their very jobs. And programmers often feel they are forced into commitments that they can't even meet, hurting their own health and relationship. So there is a biggest component missing, is the empathy for the group's position. So the customer is not able to understand the programmer's perspective, and the programmer is not able to understand the customer's perspective. Now, if we can understand each other's perspective and the needs the other person has, we'll be able to contribute something towards it, and it can build trust. The second strategy is to develop a programmer tester empathy. Programmers remember that testing takes skill and careful work, just as programming does. Now, each programmer, they always think that the testers are their enemies, and the testers always think programmers are brainless. So if we are going to stay antagonistic in nature, it's difficult that you can develop certain things on time, and it's difficult in collaborating. So we need to take advantage of the tester's ability to find mistakes you would never consider, and thank them for helping you prevent embarrassing problems from reaching the stakeholders and the users. The testers must focus on the team's joint goal, releasing a great product. Okay, that's what you must target at. When you find a mistake, it's not an occasion for celebration or gloating that you are able to find one effectively. That is not our intention or the target. We have to start working towards a greater product. And also remember that everybody makes mistakes, and mistakes are not a sign of incompetence or laziness. It was because the programmer had a different perspective when they started developing it, and the tester has got a different perspective. The third important strategy is eating together. We think this is a very simple thing to even consider on a technical forum, but it is a very good way to improve team cohesiveness. Try providing a free meal once per week. If you have the meal brought into the office, set a table and serve the food family style to prevent people from taking the food back to their desks and then start individually working on things. So, team building is very, very important. And the last strategy is team continuity. Once I have started working on a project, I have built some trust. I have started the team building process. Now the team cohesiveness has increased a lot, and the team has become very, very productive. Now, after a project ends, the team typically breaks up, and all the wonderful trust and cohesiveness that the team has formed is lost. And the next project starts with a brand new team, and they have to struggle through the four phases of team formation all over again. You can avoid this by keeping productive teams together. If your team continues, it is an advanced practice. It's not just because it's hard, but because it challenges the normal organizational structure as well. So while the team continuity is valuable, you don't have to push it, and you do not require it as a mandate to be successful. And this next practice, in which is very important in practicing collaboration, is sitting together. Sitting together, instead of documenting, instead of mailing, sending messages, and then transferring documents, and all of this is very rapid, and it is very effective, and it is also accurate when you try to communicate certain details to another person in the team. Accommodating poor communication, as the distance between two people grows, the effectiveness of their communication decreases. Misunderstandings occur and delays creep in because people start guessing to avoid the hassle of waiting for answers. That's where mistake starts appearing. Imagine I want an official confirmation from some other person in the department, and I mail it across to them. And they have not replied my mail, and I'm still stuck up with the work that I started. And I assumed some part of the data before they even handed it over to me, and I just started filling it. And then after a day's work, I identify that I was wrong. So that's how mistakes appear. So if you sit together on some work, if the other person is available, and if you don't have to wait for their answer, you can reduce a lot of errors in the process. Attempt to reduce the need for direct communication. It is a sensible response. If questions lead to delays and errors, reduce the need to ask questions. Or, in other words, you provide more information beforehand. That will help the others do their part of the work. Now, sitting together, if you see an adversarial relationship between separate groups in a team, I suggest that they sit together and discuss it out. Ask for help when you're stuck. Start arranging for a shared workspace. And you also have to leave some room for individuality. Now, these are some of the sample workspaces you can design. So you can have a cubicle based working environment where you provide some individual space to each of the programmers, but you still have a space in which you can accommodate all programmers, and it offers a place for them to sit together and then discuss on some of the team's developments. And you can also provide some boards which can be used to create their frameworks as they start their discussion. when they put everything onto the boards and then take a photograph of whatever was left on the whiteboard, it helps us keep track of what we are progressing with. That will improve a lot of productivity, and it also increases the collaboration between different team members. Now we can also see this is another sample workspace where you can provide some senior team members a space outside your vicinity, so that if they are needed, they can be approached. And you also provide space for common working together. And sitting together always resolves some of the uh, queries that are running in your head without taking a lot of time. So sitting together is a very advisable process. And then we go on into real customer involvement. This is very important in establishing a good collaboration. We understand the goals and frustrations of our customers and end users. But in an XP team, the on site customers are responsible for choosing and prioritizing the features that you build. So the XP customers, the on-site customers who come over to the development space, they direct what is required at the customer's end, and they help you understand what is required. The value of the project is in their hands, and this is a very big responsibility as an on-site customer. How do you know which features to choose unless the customer guides you through? Now, to establish this real customer involvement, we are going to still practice certain principles. So you involve them, and you involve them into all your meetings, all your discussions, and then you try to come up with a language with which you can easily communicate with the customer. Now, depending on how much of customer involvement is required, there are different types of development that can be identified. The first one is called as the personal development. In the personal development, the development team is its own customer. So I'm developing a software that my team myself can make use of. They are developing the software for their own use. As a result, you don't have to involve external customers. The team is the real customer, so they are aware of what are your requirements and what you exactly need as your outcome. The second one is called as the in-house custom development. So the in-house custom development, it occurs when your organization asks your team to build something for the organization's use. So you have a very big organization and you are part of the organization. Some other department of your very organization needs some software. So you are there to develop it. It may include writing software to streamline operations, or automation for the company's factories, or producing reports for accounting. Now, in in-house custom development, it occurs when you are building it for your own use. This makes it easily to involve real customers because they are easily accessible. They are available for you to ask questions to, or to discuss what they actually need. The best approach is to bring your customers into your team to turn your real customers into on-site customers. So you can pull one person from the other department into your own team so that they can help you with all the discussions and the proceeding. Now, the next form is called as the outsourced customer development. In the outsourced custom development, uh, it is very similar to in-house development, but you may not have the connections that an in-house team does. As a result, you may be able to recruit real customers as the team's on-site customers. And another way of software is vertical market software. Unlike customer development, vertical market software is developed for many organizations. So, like the custom development, however, it is built for a particular industry, and it's often customized for each customer. So, be careful about giving the real customers too much control over the vertical market software. A very good example of this can be Tally. Tally is one software which is universally available, but if it requires I can't say Tally. Now imagine this attendance system. There is an attendance system that is available. Most of the colleges use that, but they need a little of fine tuning here and there to match the customer's exact needs. So you have a framework which can be modified little here and there, trimmed here and there to provide the customers. But you don't give too much control over your software to the customer. That's called as a vertical market software. The last one is the horizontal market software. This is the visible tip of the software development iceberg, and it's the software that's intended to be used across a wide range of industries. So as a horizontal market developer, your organization may not have any close ties with the customer. uh, so it's like developing Tally never gets into contact with any of its customers. They just understand the policies and the government rules, and they start developing, and then they give it to everybody who is accessing it. And when we try to develop software, we also need to understand the language in communication. This is very important in collaboration. So a ubiquitous language is required for us to understand each other. Now try describing your business logic and your current system to a non-programmer domain expert. If you are able to explain how your system works in terms the domain expert understands, then you have achieved your purpose. And Einstein used to say, if you can explain any mathematical or any concept to a fourth grade student, then you have effectively communicated and you have understood your concept. That's what he meant. So in ubiquitous language also, that's the same thing. So I am a programmer, I am talking in a different terminology and in a different perspective. I should be able to communicate my concept to the client properly. So the domain expertise conundrum, it's one of the challenges of professional software development. And the problem is that the programmers aren't necessarily experts in the areas for which they write software. Overcoming this challenge is fundamentally an issue of communication. Domain experts communicate their expertise to the programmers, who in turn encode that knowledge into software. The challenge is communicating that information clearly and accurately. Now we see that there are two languages in use. The first one is the programmer's language, which is completely technology, which talks about the classes, the methods, the algorithms, and the databases. Whereas the domain expert talks in a language of their own domain. So it's like financial models, chip fabrication, plant breeding, etc. etc. So these are the domain experts' language. So when you have two different languages, it is very difficult to collaborate. Now, how do we overcome this challenge? The main idea to overcome is that the programmers need to adapt listening and explaining things in the language of the domain experts, because they are our customers. We need to understand them, empathize with them. Only then we'll be able to develop what they actually need. And the customer or the domain expert should be able to give as much information as possible about their domain, so that the programmers can get themselves completely involved into their environment to comprehend what they actually need. So these are some of the methods and strategies which are practically used in collaboration, establishing good collaboration in agile development environments. We'll be looking into some more topics on collaboration under Unit 2 in the next few sessions. But this is Dr. Diana signing off for today. Thank you, one and all.